In this video 3 of the top recommended authors, the Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3 series, I'd like to recommend again some worthy and noble names of talented authors, 21 in a row, 21 in total, that have written some really good beneficial advice, written some good helpful advice, written some really good stuff that can be very profound and very empowering, of course, many different ways, from ufology to nutrition to mental health to holistic lifestyles, to also government secrets and healthy living. I think it's the most important things, mental health and healthy living in these days, especially after the global mess that we went through the past few years. And in this volume number 3, just like in volume 1 and volume 2, as I've shared, I received a lot of emails from wonderful audience members truly seeking some book recommendations, material, authors, meditations, tips and tricks to succeed in the spiritual life and growing outward and working on their inner, not just external. And in relation to the books to me are not just some chore, some task, something, oh, you must do this, and like having a master over your head, but it's a gift. It's a gift to us humans, definitely, just like music is, just like nature is, just like animals are, children. And books definitely are doors. The doors that must be entered, and it's the doors that once we enter them, we go through to a completely different world, something that we've never seen before. Literature definitely can be seen, I think, as extremely exciting, but an exciting and fun traditional way of traveling in time, traveling from one place to another into a completely different reality, and then learn and pass this, what we learn, pass these values from one generation to another, or even to our friends, neighbors, children, and so forth. As I've said before, a house with no books is like a body with no soul. I mean, I don't understand people that don't read, but I'm currently writing my own first book based on my own experiences as a trance channeler and my direct dealings with Theta Tauri and the KALASK race and several other races. And the book should be released in somewhere early 2024, but I think writing also is just as important as reading. So reading or writing are deep personal experiences, and writing is more like channeling. I mean, one of the lowest level of channeling, lightest ways of channeling is writing or automatic writing. So a lifetime commitment it should be. The reading is another way to look at it, is an exercise of walking, but walking in somebody else's shoes for a while to experience something new. So quite calm adventure into another world. And speaking of another world, let's get into it. So without any preferences or any orders, first author I wish to speak of is a wonderful lady named Elana Freeland, and she's just not an author, but she's also an investigator. And she wrote a book called Under an Ionized Sky, and we know already by that name, that means geoengineering. And geoengineering is very real, and it's a book on geoengineering, but also weather, cloud seeding, contrails versus chemtrails, and vice versa, because they're two completely different things. I've done a video already on geoengineering and chemtrails, like 2 videos actually, a few years back. So I recently read Elena's book, wonderful material. I was just nodding my head and agreeing. Like, she's absolutely correct with her very thorough investigations, and I would say her brave investigative work as well on the poisoning of humans, nature, animals, rivers, creeks, and so forth with geoengineering, spraying. I highly also recommend a documentary called The Dimming, a full-length climate engineering documentary, as well as a colossal website on geoengineering, a wonderful website, powerful website called geoengineeringwatch.org by an American, run by a geoengineering researcher named Diane Sanfilipo out of California. He's on Twitter, he's on YouTube, great channel. And I was actually just watching Dane's interview with the United States Democratic presidential candidate RFK Jr., another wonderful, brave soul, brave man. And they talked about climate and geoengineering, and the interview is called Is Climate Engineering Real? So both of these great men should be read and followed, in my opinion. The next man is just another expert in the pyramids, Erich Von Daniken, legend, older gentleman, spent his whole life studying the same thing. Expert, certainly, top 5 in my opinion. I mean, this guy sold 70 million books, over 70 million books. He spent his entire life studying ancient civilizations that our current heavily revised schooling system don't really teach us about, or internet, but he speaks on the hidden knowledge, and just with ease, with professionalism, with sharpness, the existence of ancient civilizations, but also the existence of the Anunnakis, the gods from the sky, as they used to say. And also, too, who built all of the ancient civilization structures on Earth. Was it the Egyptians? I don't think so. They couldn't even build the sewage system. They were borderline primitive. So this gentleman, Erich Von Daniken, this phenomenal researcher, gets into all of these things, and he explains it to the details, like truly who were the gods from the sky, gods in the sky. And I own 5 or 6 of his books. He's got way too many, than, in my opinion, I think 15, 20 books, but The History is Wrong, that was a good one. Signs of the Gods in 2011, I think, 2010, I read that. But back then, I think if we look at 10, 12 years ago, I was heavily researching ancient civilizations. I wasn't even in the channeling industry. I knew what channeling was, I just never concentrated. My concentration focus was traveling the world, because I wasn't married. I'm still not married, no kids, so I have a very, very, very sovereign type of independent, free-spirited life, and back then too. So all I wanted to do is travel the world, touch pyramids, meditate pyramids, look at ancient sites, temples as well. And I definitely learned, even when I was in Giza, I mean, that Sphinx, Giza, clearly that was never built by Egyptians. And I've done some videos on Giza pyramids and on Sphinx, and I definitely agree with Erich Von Daniken's stance, where he stands. And he certainly, his book certainly helped me a lot along the way to understand our current given history is lying to us. Egyptology is lying to us, heavily, heavily lying to us. Pyramids across the world were strategically designed, strategically placed on this planet, in this reality, by advanced builders who already knew the precise location of Earth, dimensions of Earth, and latitudes. This is why a lot of pyramids, including Giza, is placed on latitude 30, just like that it matches to all of the other places, including Eastern Islands and Peru. So this brave Swiss-born, I think he's from Switzerland. Hopefully him and I had a chance to meet in the future and chat in person before he passes away, and I hope he lives a very long time. He's a phenomenal author, and maybe when we do speak, we'll speak in his private or native tongue, perhaps. I used to live in Germany, so I speak German. Ich spreche Deutsch, da ich vor langer Zeit für Kurs sein in Deutschland gelebt habe, 1 Jahr. Tolles Essen, toller Biermarket, großes Hall an Erich aus Kanada, aus Toronto, Canada. The next author is also European, but he's from England, UK, the Ronald Kinsella, the Kinsella brothers from the United Kingdom, and super nice guy, beautiful man, great guy, very, very friendly guy, and extremely authentic and genuine guy. And I've chatted with him a few times about certain things. He's also a very talented artist, illustrator. He depicts many of his galactic counterparts that he works with, including draconian beings, reptilian beings, Zeta Reticuli beings. He depicts them wonderfully. Oh, absolutely phenomenal, talented artist. And he writes a lot of his books based on a mix, a very, very unique mix. Truth, comedy, science fiction, hypothetical situations, with some absolutely great illustration and artistic depictions. Great guy, great author. The next author is Diane Sanfilipo, and Diane Sanfilipo was recommended to me, and I'm glad, because she wrote a phenomenal book on sugar. And as funny as that sounds, because we're not talking about ancient civilizations or UFOs or ETs, but sugar addictions and sugar detox. And I used to eat a lot of sugar. I was definitely a big fan on sugar. All my life I was, especially as a child. And definitely this book showed me how to bust the sugar cravings naturally and completely disconnect from the sugar cravings, and how to live a more of a healthier lifestyle, holistic diet, dairy-free, sugar-free, gluten-free. And going back to sugar, she wonderfully showed in her own book the benefits and the disadvantages and advantages of sugar, or short-term, long-term effects of sugar, or a lot of sugar, or not enough sugar. And she explained, why do humans, why do we crave sugar so much? What is it about sugar that we really need? Is it in our head? What is it? And also too, she gave many suggestions in the book about alternatives to sugar. And it definitely changed my ways, eliminated most of my sugar cravings, meats, dairy as well. Her book is excellent, and I definitely found out how dangerous so much sugar can be. And there are some incredible, great information documentaries currently in the industry and also outside of the industry on bad foods and processed foods and fake water and sugar. I mean, one of my favorites, Food Inc. There's What the Health, The Sugar Film, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, The Magic Pill, Food Choices, Fed Up. Fed Up is a great documentary. A lot of them are available on Netflix and Amazon and things like that. But also, too, I remember reading a review-published journal, so by British Journal of Sports Medicine, where they said that refined sugar has very, very similar effects as cocaine, as in the illegal drug cocaine. Sugar is definitely addicting. I mean, it's not that good for us, so we got to limit sugar every way we can. Next author is also from Europe. He's from Copenhagen in Denmark, Tomorkenyi. And he's a very, very smart, clever guy, a very, very, very clever guy. For his age, absolutely. He's a researcher. He's a researcher, a scientific researcher, to be specific, of biomechanics. The book is about biomechanics, promotes the awareness of health on a very global world scale, and the book is actually called Human Mechanics. And I don't know this gentleman personally. We've never met or emailed or anything, and he was recommended to me by a friend of mine in Europe. And she forwarded me the clip of his Instagram account. Something he was talking about, and I was like, wow, he's talking about some good truth. How does he know that? As I went through his profile, definitely a clever guy. And ultimately, he promotes healthier life, really. And he dabs into topics of meat. Why do we need so much meat? Why do we eat so much meat? Where does the necessity come from? Why do we eat meat all the time? But then he explains different ancient practices too, and medicines and fastings and detoxing and many different things when it comes to even breath or breath work. Dysfunctions that humans have, or 7 points of myofascial meridians, gets into that. So a very clever kid. And he also, for example, I remember in the book showed the normal and abnormal pelvic tilt, different shoulder injuries and exercises or protractions, balance versus unbalanced spine, even bad sitting positions, bad sleeping positions. And he depicts it really, really wonderfully. And he also, in the book, I remember, had many diagrams where how do natural elements on the outside penetrate our skin. Our skin is one of our largest organs. So also, too, he speaks about connection of organs and the chakra system, the chakra points, vortex points, which is absolutely correct. He speaks on the pineal gland. I've done a video on the pineal gland. So really a great modern way to look at a human body, but also our eating habits, muscles, cells, how long we live, human potential. And the book, at the very end of the book, he teaches about 60, 70 or so different protocols or programs and exercises to experience strong benefits of digging deep into the true biological pattern and entering the field of his wording, biomechanics. So this is a biomechanics book. Pretty great author, very smart author. The next author is Edward Griffin, or G. Edward Griffin, with a book on cancer. And the book on cancer is called What is Cancer? And he writes really what causes cancer, away from what the internet says. He definitely stays away from all the crazy conspiracies and sticks to the facts. And a lot of his facts are hidden truths I've never heard of. So definitely I'm glad I read that book. And we know cancer is a very serious problem in our society. And for example, I know that in the United States in 2019, there was reported 1,750,000 reported cancer patients or cases, and over 600,000 of them died. That's a big number of innocent humans dying. And in Canada, as per our Canadian website, canada.ca website, in 2021, it said that cancer is top 3 leading cause of death, and estimated 2 out of every 5 Canadians are going to die of cancer or will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. Now, I wish to think positively and not negatively. I've never had cancer. Nobody in my family has cancer. Those numbers are very alarming. But this book speaks on what causes cancer truly. So long-term, short-term. Where does the cancer come from? What is cancer? And how does it occupy or affect the body so fast? This virus, this mysterious, this disease, this illness, this problem, this sickness. How does this really happen? Is it something that we're ingesting? Is it something we're drinking? Is it our lifestyle? Is it stress? Is it on a more of a level, of genetic level? Like where is it coming from? And also too, how would the world look like without cancer? if the cancer can be beat and eliminated. I mean, we know we had 60 years of research right now. You'd think we'd have a cure to cancer. Right. But 350 pages of cancer-related material, and not really big into reading books about diseases, but I did read this one. It was certainly great information that I never found on the internet. My doctor probably would have never told me things I read in this book. Facts, of course, no conspiracies, only facts and truths, and the book never speaks anything negatively against any doctor. It is just a book on what would the world look like if there is no such thing as cancer, and if this cancer was not attacking our immune body. And from my perspective at least, I think this is a great and outstanding understanding what is cancer in the first place, but also too, at the high alarming rate, what is it that is causing so much cancer? Not why cancer exists, but what's causing so much cancer? What is causing it every day? And I think everyone in the society is missing some things about this puzzle, but this book helped me understand the puzzle itself. And the next book is Dr. John Coleman, and he wrote 2 different books in relation to nothing to do with cancer, but nothing to do with that, but in relation to what are the largest, biggest secret societies in the world, and the topics of the term, as he uses, Committee of the 300, and then other committees, but also to connection and functionality of banks, governments, and different special foundation group, investment groups, corporations that we've never heard of. So a lot of these institutions and how do they really run our society. And he really explained many different secret names and the titles within our society that's not talked about. He talks about, he exposes, and sometimes the truths are hidden in plain sight, and he kind of like pinpoints and says, well, this is why this name is brought up, this is why that name is brought up. So he puts the pieces together. He talks about Freedom House to Economic Committee of the North Atlantic, the Committee of the 12, the Committee of the 14, speaks on the Arab Higher Committee, speaks on the banks, so Bank of Ireland, England, Canada, Geneva, United States, so Bank of America, I mean. But then also, who are the ruling families in Dubai? I've been to Dubai twice. I have some high-powered friends there, and yeah, there are some ruling families there. Who is the ruling families of the China, Iran, or Fabian socialism? So very interesting things we don't really hear in a society every day. The next author is all about extraterrestrials, my kind of guy, that's Mendonca, and he's a researcher and author of spirituality, extraterrestrials, channeling, consciousness, one of my favorite subjects. So extremely valuable books, extremely valuable concepts. And he has 2 books I've quite enjoyed. First one's called Meet the Hybrids from 2015. I believe Vashta did the art rendering, beautiful art rendering, and Barbara Lamb's also in the book. And I had a pleasure to get regressed by Barbara Lamb in 2018 in Detroit. So a great lady, great regressionist. But this book speaks on the hybridization programs between extraterrestrials and other extraterrestrials, but also extraterrestrials and humans. Genetic extractions, everything from sperm, eggs, to even sweat, variety of different genetic materials that they take from us, but then also the whole hybrid culture, the hybrid programs, and many different things. The second book talks about being with the beings, so again, in relation to extraterrestrial contact. But in this book, what he did, he also included interviews with other channelers, and other trans channelers and non-trans channelers. And some of them, not all of them, just some of them are very lightweight, so I disagree with some of their statements, with no judgment, of course, but the books are absolutely excellent, absolutely great. And the book speaks on just good facts, good truth, nothing to do with nonsense and mental illnesses of SSP and Ashtars and Galactic Federation cults, just real good channeling type of truth. The next book is by Lloyd Pye, and the book is called Everything You Know Is Wrong. And he words this, that everything in our world, in our life is wrong. And I know it can sound harsh, but another book is called Star Child, and this book talks about hybridization programs and genetic material being taken from humans and our DNA, our multidimensional DNA, the history of our DNA, but also to the revisions within our DNA and our ancient past. And he speaks about our own human origin, even our fossil records. Actually, I was surprised to see him talk about that, and it really shows, in these books how many things are just manipulated as far as records are concerned. It's just It's insane. And when I got into him, and I was flabbergasted by the amount of hidden stuff that is around that's just blocking us from knowing the truth. I mean, we're always hearing lies, like Darwin's theory, Darwin's ridiculous nonsense monkey theory. Obviously, we didn't come from any monkeys, but in this book, actually, he does uncover the scam, the hoax of the Darwin's theory, which is the most stupidest, ridiculous, and the most primitive thing I've ever heard. Like, you hear it and you almost feel yourself being dumb. It's just the stupidest theory ever. I cannot believe that people are actually believing this nonsense. But this book, both of these books, overall concepts, great concepts by a great researcher, variety of different hybridization topics to what's wrong within our society. So excellent author. Another author is Russ Kick with the name of the book. Again, it's called Everything You Know in Society is Wrong. Very similar to the previous author, but this is more of a book, is of a guide. So it's a guide on today's society's misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, fake news. Very, very, very similar to Lloyd Pye's books, just previously as I mentioned, but in this guide type of book, he also has contributions or statements and investigative work by other researchers, other perspectives. And I think there was, from my best understanding, approximately 20 or 20-ish or so different authors and researchers were involved in this guide type of book, and they all really speak of their own experience. They speak of their own investigative work, their research on many different topics within our society today. So rigged elections, staged wars make money for the governments, of course, banking system, big pharma, religious systems, so man-made radical religions, many different propagandas, but then facts versus conspiracies, and he always sticks with the facts and the truth and has the links to back it all up. So it's certainly a great author. And speaking of great authors, great researchers, great experts, is Dr. Semir Osmanagich, the founder of the Bosnian pyramid, city of Visoko, in the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He has a PhD in Mayan studies. He lived in the United States for a bit, but he's back home now to his home country. And he's got dozens of different books in relation to pyramids, ancient civilizations. This person wrote a book in relation to Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, and he's not even Turkish. He does so much different research, writes so many different things, even on Yonaguni underwater site in Japan, Machu Picchu in Peru, Baalbek site in Lebanon, Giza pyramids, Cairo, Egypt, Luxor, all around Luxor, all those pyramids. This man writes about it. And obviously, Giza pyramids and the Great Pyramid were never built by no ancient Egyptian. This is a corrupt, primitive, and laughable Egyptology lie. Dr. Semir obviously explains it wonderfully. He speaks about the pyramids in Sicily, 7 pyramids in Mauritius, and I mean, remarkable knowledge in this person. Second to none. I would say he's a top 5 pyramid expert, right next to Erich Von Daniken, Graham Hancock, Robert Schoch. I mean, I've spoken with Dr. Semir Osmanagich live at the Bosnian Pyramid about 2020, I think. And every question I asked, it was answered flawlessly. So one of my definitely favorite authors when it comes to ancient civilizations. The next author, I don't actually know his name, but he goes by the name Etienne De La Boetie II. Obviously, not his real name, but he wrote a great illustration type of book just at the time of 2019, when all this global mess happened, and it's called The Government. And I met this guy originally at LA Conscience Life Expo in Los Angeles, where, by the way, I will be exhibiting myself and presenting in February 24, booth number 155 at the main floor International Ballroom. But anyway, I met this gentleman and his wife, his partner, when I was there this year, and I found him to be extremely patriotic, sovereign and patriotic, freedom-loving, passionate researcher, proud American. And he wrote a great book, really, how the American government is scamming the people, lying to people, and congressmen, presidents, prime ministers, whatever ministers, all are run secretly by much, much, much more powerful groups that we have never even heard of and will never be part of their club. And his book is, another thing I appreciate, is not just text and words. No, it's filled with pictures and video snapshots and illustrations, depictions, memes that are funny but truthful, charts, infographic charts, and different things that really explain who runs the United States of America, but also too who runs Europe, who runs Vatican, who runs Canada, corrupt media companies, mainstream media, staged events, crisis actors, staged wars, political assassinations. I mean, topics that really show how society is controlled through monopolization of mind control, of school indoctrination system. If you can homeschool your children, beautiful, do that, I advise that. So he questions and asks, why is it the governments and the big pharma have so much power? And he also has this yellow, small, called The Liberator, USB stick. It looks like almost like a flashcard, but all the information from the book is on that stick. The next author is Jeff Olson, very, very sharp business guy, nothing to do with spirituality, nothing to do with ETs. The book is called Slight Edge, and I remember reading and learning in this book, and I'm a business guy, I've been in business for 12 years now in Toronto, and fortunate and grateful to have made a very good life for myself due to hard work ethic, dedication, consistency, vision too, and empowerment, and also willpower. But this book that he speaks of just that from a business perspective. And it definitely makes a person think and enables the person to make really wise daily choices, business choices that'll lead the person into business success. And the book makes a person also too, I think, aware of the unwritten rules that we all live by and just we're not aware of, as well as really principle in business, in life too, but business life, to eliminate a lot of time wasting, insignificant decisions left. I mean, imagine going to work, you got a meeting first thing at 8 a.m., it lasts like an hour and a half. I mean, what's the point? At least in my company too, we don't have meetings more than 10 minutes. What do you need to say? What's the most important project for today? Or most important, that's it. And we wrap it up. And let's say everyone goes their way and we meet 8 a.m., 8:15, it wraps it up. Let's get to the point, start wasting time. And this book is just about that. It's about stop wasting time in life. Stop saying, oh, you want to win a lottery. And this book talks about that. People that say, I want to win a lottery, I'm going to play the lottery, make the millions. Well, he speaks and educates and empowers an individual what it's like to create a vision, create a timeline, imagination, visualization, to make millions, not to sit and just do lottery scratch tickets. So a very wise business guy, non-spiritual guy, but the book certainly can teach people about business. The next two authors are actually, they know each other. I know one of them, so Jefferson, Viscardi, and Rob Gauthier. We had two different books on the same topic, on channeling. It's called Pleiadian Soul Reflection, and the other one is called Benevolent Hybrid Reptilian. And Rob Gauthier is one of the very few remaining authentic trance channelers in our professional trance channeling industry. I know him personally, a great friend of mine. And both of these gentlemen have created these two books based on the relayed information, channeled information from Rob's two galactic guides that he works with, a reptilian from Capella and a Denibian sixth density humanoid being. And these two books really, it's just relayed information, relayed intelligence, but also very interesting because it teaches us humans, readers, about their species, how they reproduce, what they eat, what they celebrate, do they have children, do they not, what. Absolutely great for anyone that's trying to get into the channeling industry or that's interesting about what is channeling to help them go on their own spiritual path. Next book also is about channeling, but very, very close to my heart, and that is KALASK. It's an identical name of the actual physical Alpha Draconian pureblood war race, so Draconian race, high sixth density race that come from the Thuban star system, who I personally have had the pleasure and the honor to interact with, co-create, converse, speak directly on different occasions for a certain amount of time now. And KALASK holds a very special place in my own consciousness, my highest respect to KALASK. And this book was written by the former channeler in Germany of KALASK, David, and he wrote his book, I think, approximately 4 years ago or so, something of that time frame. And anyway, since then, they parted ways. They no longer channel together. And the book here and there still lingers. It's available here and there. And this honorable, powerful, intense, very, very proudful and dominant race is certainly a race that I think everyone should know of. Different draconian races too. The humans should read and understand truly what is an Alpha Draconian, what is an Alpha Draconian empire, and avoid nonsense, ridiculous, and anti-reptilian material on the internet by radical love light, unicorn and rainbow, 5D, new age, medbed cult, and truly get to know the power, the intensity, the dominance of the Alpha Draconian beings. And by the way, as of summer of 23, so right now, there is no authorized representative of KALASK in the channeling industry here today, anywhere in the world, none with actual contracts. This is a verified fact. There's a few fraudulent KALASK channelers, so clowns playing games, not realizing the consequences lined up for them, which will be colossally destructive for their own energy, for their consciousness on a level that they cannot even fathom yet. But as authentic trance public channelers of KALASK, no, there are no humans today currently publicly that are allowed to channel KALASK with authorized contracts and so forth. But this book is a great beginning to understand what is KALASK, and KALASK soon is planning their return, and it'll be much, much more publicly this time. The next author is Barbara Hand Clow, or Barbara Clow, and she's the author of a book called Alchemy of Nine Dimensions, or Alchemy of 9D, as she says, and another book actually called The Mayan Code, so about the Mayan prophecies in relation to 2011 and 2012. But I enjoyed her book on the 9 dimensions of consciousness, as with her perception, of course, what is 9 density, what is 8 density, 7 density, and so forth. So great book on dimensions. The next author is a legend, Zecharia Sitchin, one of the greatest authors of all time. Absolutely. I mean, this guy introduced the entire topic of Anunnakis to everyone. And through his books, some inaccuracies, yes, some mistranslations, some, but not a lot. And his books are definitely a great foundation for anyone who wishes to learn more about the Anunnakis. Anunnaki is not the real ancient name, but we know it as Anunnakis. And yes, they were absolutely real, physical and real, big boys. And I find personally, from my personal opinion, most Anunnaki material today on the internet, these humans, these people, speakers, these authors, they're not aware of the biggest Anunnaki secrets. They're just researching from the human available material and repeating somebody else's bullshit. Anunnaki, 2 brothers, Enlil, came from Nibur, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely not. Particularly, I love the ones that go, I just channeled Enki. You scamming hoes. You absolute scum and filth. That is the biggest lie, misleading innocent humans. And I've had a pleasure and honor to, an absolute honor to speak to some of the most high-ranking races that have the true record of the Anunnaki's children and then the children's descendants. To be told, to be explained in quite detailed way, who were these beings? So yes, Anunnakis were extremely real, living here, humanoid beings with reptilian mixed DNA, particular race, of course. Yes, and I've been informed in a very patient way, their entire story, the best way that it could have been explained to me. Their armies, their ships, DNA revisions, multiple visits to Earth, and why, when and where, length of time, each time Anunnaki stayed. Genetic modifications, DNA altering, insertions of things, gold, pyramids, Thoth, Ra, involvement with Elohims. What's the meaning of red to Anunnaki? What's the body weight of each adult? What's their eye color? What's their height? What's their skin patch? What's their density level? What's the name of the armies that they came with? What's the ancient name of these armies? What's the ancient name of their ship? Even locations I'm aware of where they stayed each time they came here. Percentage of reptilian DNA within them versus humanoid DNA. Which humanoid race did they come from? From which planet, which star system? Which reptilian DNA did they have, and how did they even obtain that DNA? How did they get it? The details of physical appearance of the Anunnakis. How many fingers did they have? How many liters of blood did they have? What's the percentage of malevolency versus benevolency? What's the armies? How many armies did they come to Earth with? Out of the 5 times they came to Earth, they came here 5 times. Where did they stay each time? How many children did they bring? How did they reproduce? What did they eat to survive and sustain their big bodies? How many hearts did they have? What's the eye color? What's the eye size? How many teeth? Which technology did they deploy below ground, on ground, and above ground, particularly spy satellites? What's the involvement of them and Antarctica? Which disagreements did they have with draconians and why? Which specific race? So where are these details on the internet today by the I spoke to Enki last week experts? Where are these? Because they don't have this information. What there is on the information is that they came from Boeties, inaccurate. They came from planet Nibiru, inaccurate. Enlil and Enki were brothers, absolutely inaccurate. Enlil wasn't his name. Enki wasn't his name. There's an ancient name. So Zecharia Sitchin introduced the ideology of this whole evidence, this whole concept of the Anunnakis. His books are great start for anyone to learn the Anunnakis, but it is very unfortunate that we don't have reliable, authentic, and good-hearted channelers today in the industry to tell humans the truth about Anunnakis, because the lies are promoted and forwarded to make money, to get fame. And I talked to Enki last week. Those kind of channelings are absolutely fraudulent. In relation to Sitchin, Lost Worlds or Lost Realms, The 12th Planet, a couple of my favorites, and I think one of these books was written back in the 70s, early 70s, before I was even born, but an absolutely great author, and he'll be a legend, and God bless his soul. The next author I wish to speak of is George Orwell, a book called 1984. I mean, it should be renamed Canada. That's what, and 1984 book became Canada, not in the past few years, but legendary masterpiece, that's for sure, in relation to social science, fiction type of novel, and very, very serious cautionary tale of what our world can become in the future, and it really is becoming here in Canada. And the book was written in 1949. I mean, I swear to God, it's a replica of what Canada became in the past just 3 years with the tyrannic government that we have here. And George definitely laid out how a tyrannic and authoritarian government really works, which steps will they take, because they don't do big things, they do little things, take a little freedom away as they go away. And here in Canada, at least in Ontario, I mean, I have a lot of friends across Canada, wonderful views across Canada, and we talk all the time, great viewers, beautiful people, and Canada has just became something that, my God, like, you would never think this would be possible. And anyway, 1984 is a good example of what's going to be going forward in society. But the next author is John Wiseman, Lefty Wiseman, an Englishman from UK with a little survival tactical type of book called The Survival Guide. And it ranges really from any emergency first aid to prepping food in nature, if you're poisoned, what to do in relation to natural poisoning, disaster survival, preparation of essential, coping with disaster itself, the flooding, the tornado, and heavy rain and these things. And it's very popular here, this book, in Canada, with northern Canadians, rural Canadians, native communities, as well as fishermen here in Canada, hunters here in Canada who go up north and do like ice fishing. They'll stay there for a few days. People that live in the rural areas in the country. So when it comes to rural emergencies, this book's perfect for it. Any kind of wounds and cuts in the nature, accidental poisoning in the nature, eating a leaf or a mushroom or a berry or something, this book's perfect for it. It even has different rope knots, fire starting, shelter making. I mean, not to be funny or disrespectful, but this book would have been very useful to Christopher McCandless. This is a young kid from the United States who dropped out of school, ran away from home, went to northern Atlantic, not Antarctica, he went to Alaska, and then died by himself. He poisoned himself and he died of starvation. It's called Into the Wild. That was the movie, Into the Wild. Great book. But this particular little book, I have several copies. One's in my house here, one's in my cottage up north, and I keep it there. And a lot of my buddies who are up north too, they same thing. Every time you go fish and hunt, they bring this little booklet with them. So excellent great little book for emergency planning. The next author is a proud European guy, former Yugoslavia, so he's either Serbian or Croatian, I'm unsure, but it's a book on consciousness, one of my favorite topics, probably top 3 favorite topic, consciousness. And so many people today cannot define what's consciousness, but it's a book on consciousness, minerals, stones, plants, animals, elementals. And I love these books because they teach the real information that people should be reading in this incarnation that we're trying to go through, and connectivity of in consciousness, so our human consciousness versus the overall consciousness or oneness or even the oversoul. And This book speaks on that, speaks on synchronicities and perception and timelines and different realities, but mainly about consciousness and the universe as consciousness. And I absolutely love that. It's music to my ears when I see topics and research or videos on consciousness. It's extremely important because we hear it so much. Oh, you guys got to use your consciousness. Oh, this consciousness. What is consciousness? Speak to me for 15 minutes on consciousness. People can't do that today. Instead, they're going to go to Google and say, what's consciousness? And what's Google going to tell me? Consciousness is an awareness of one's surroundings. Is that the answer to consciousness? To such a critical topic, massive topic? What about a cosmic explanation, galactic, celestial, interstellar explanation of consciousness? Or explaining consciousness from a celestial perspective and putting it all together. So this author I like because he's deep. And he writes about it wonderfully. Certainly he understands what's consciousness, frequency, vibration. He's very good and very, very neat guy because he's extremely private. No social media, nothing. He's got 9 books, excellent books. I've read his material before in Europe while on tours and traveling. And he's got a book on the moon. I've done the video on the moon, and he's absolutely right. He's got a book on religiousness. Definitely, I would say this guy is a deep thinker, an experiencer, contactee, and a big meditation guy, Zen meditation expert. The last author is a politician, one of my favorite politicians, just due to his character and integrity, and that's Ron DeSantis, 46th governor of Florida, and an author of 2 books now, writing his 3rd, and one of my favorites is The Courage to Be Free, of course. And he's a very, very, very impressive person, extremely patriotic, phenomenal resume, very, very clean record, no scandals. And prior to him actually being a Florida governor, he graduated from both Yale and Harvard University, so Harvard Law School. He's actually an attorney. And he went to the United States Navy as a JAG officer. And then during the active duty and service, he was deployed to Iraq. But then, when he was in Iraq, he was working with the United States Navy SEALs as a support to a commander in relation to Navy missions and Navy different tactical operations. And he got himself a Bronze Star Medal as well. Then he, eventually after the military, he served as a federal prosecutor, processing or prosecuting pedophiles and rapists. And that right there deserves a massive applause. Tackling the sickness, the most evil of our society. And then eventually he went into Congress, from my understanding, about early 2012. And then he became a governor. And then, as I spent a lot of time in Florida, I mean, I have a lot of friends there, and by far Ron is the most patriotic politician in the whole United States of America. Canadian politicians, these clowns here, can learn from this class act. Very, very patriotic guy, admired by most Floridians, with an exception of a very small, strange, odd, fringe, tiny minority, but loved by most Floridians, that's for sure, and I can definitely see why. And the book, this book that Don wrote called The Freedom, speaks about the woke agenda and how the elite pushes the woke agenda, this racism, this racist woke agenda, this poisonous tactic to poison the minds of our youth. And it's destroying our society, and it's destroying our youth and our children, and it's promoting crime and racism and division and segregation, and these things are not good, of course. So it's extremely toxic for our youth, and for many Canadians here in our cities have already fallen. They've fallen to this hateful and racist ideology, and anything that's hateful or racist I do not support. So this book is a very truthful, factual, and patriotic type of book. Very compassionate and caring book that I believe every American should own. And in Florida, I mean, humbly speaking, I know friends, I have friends and clients from Miami to Tampa to Jacksonville, my God, Orlando to West Palm Beach. DeSantis is loved and respected by most Floridians, everywhere really. So it's a wonderful to see his books out and released for all the Americans to truly see what it is like to have a very honest, a very, very authentic and extremely patriotic politician.